So the other day I was at a coffee shop and I struck up a conversation with this guy, and we were going back and forth asking each other where you were from, what you do for a living. I told him I was a pastor, and he said, "Oh, what church do you work at? What is the church like?" And we're talking about the church. And at the end of the conversation, he says, "Hey, just keep the gospel at the center. Just be about the gospel." And I paused for a second. I wanted to ask him so bad, what do you mean by that? When you say the gospel, what do you mean? And maybe you're like me. Over the years, you've heard Christians say, we just care about the gospel. We need to make sure people believe in the gospel. We just want our pastor to preach the gospel. But I found that over the years, whenever I ask people what the gospel means, like what does that word actually mean, I usually get one of two responses. One, they piece through a response and you realize that they don't really know what the gospel means. They say a few different things, or they say that we are sinners who were condemned to hell, but Jesus died for our sins so that we can go to heaven when we die. Jesus was about so much more than that. He was about this life and this world. He was about here and now. The gospel is bigger than you can possibly imagine. And so what I want to do is just walk through what the gospel actually means. The gospel has kind of three major points, and if you can remember these three things, then you totally can explain the gospel. Or if you know these three things, then you can explain the gospel. God has done something for you, He is doing something in you, and He is doing something through you. You can even reduce it to 6 words: for you, in you, and through you. If you know those 6 words, then you know the core of the gospel. God has done something for you, something you did not deserve, something you could never earn. In the death and resurrection of Jesus, God has set you free from your past. You are no longer the sum of the decisions you have made. You are not the mistakes you have made or the trophies you have won. You are, at your core, totally loved. You have a new future and a new hope. And as Philip Yancey has said, there is nothing you can do to make God love you more. And there's nothing you can do to make God love you less. At the core of your being, you are completely and truly loved. God has done something for you. And God is doing something in you. When you follow Jesus, you begin a deep inner journey, and you begin to pay attention to what's going on in your heart and in your mind. You start to lean away from the things that make you bitter and indifferent and resentful. And you start to lean towards those things that bring out compassion and justice and peace and love. You start to build a better world instead of your own world. And you look for things that last instead of things that fade. And God begins to prompt you and call you and invite you. And over time, your heart beats in rhythm with God's heart for the world. And finally, God is doing something through you. You are not a bystander or a spectator to what God is doing in this world. God is present and active, and He works through people. And you have a part to play. You have gifts and passions and talents, and God is inviting you to bring them to the table and join Him in the ongoing restoration of the world. God has done something for you. He is doing something in you, and He is doing something through you. This is the gospel.